Let's be honest. You've told yourself 1,000 times, this time, I'll stay consistent. You make a plan. You promise to follow your rules. You swear you'll never repeat the same mistakes again. And for a few days, maybe even a week, everything looks perfect. You wake up early, review your charts, take only the clean setups, journal every trade. You feel calm, focused, and in control. You start to believe this is it. The turning point. The beginning of the new version of you. The version that finally has it figured out. The version that doesn't panic, doesn't chase, doesn't make emotional decisions. For a brief moment, everything feels aligned. But then one small loss. One random trade that doesn't go your way. Maybe it's a setup that looked perfect but failed. Maybe it's a tiny mistake that snowballs. And suddenly, everything collapses. You start to spiral. You overthink. You break your rules again. You revenge trade. You open a new position just to make it back. You stare at the screen, not analyzing but hoping. Hoping the next candle will fix the pain you just felt. But it doesn't. It makes it worse. And in that moment, the same old voice whispers again. Why can't you just stay consistent? You feel ashamed. Frustrated. You close your laptop in anger. Tell yourself you'll stop trading for a few days. You delete your journal. You convince yourself that next week will be different. You'll start over fresh. You'll be stronger, smarter, more disciplined. You'll fix everything on Monday. But deep down, you already know what's going to happen. Because this isn't the first time you've been here, is it? It's not the second. It's not even the 10th. It's a cycle that keeps repeating over and over again. The same motivation. The same mistakes. The same crash. You keep promising yourself a new beginning, but every new beginning ends the same way. And the more it repeats, the more you start to question yourself. Maybe I'm just not built for this. Maybe consistency just isn't for me. Maybe I'm not good enough. But that's not true. The truth is, this loop has nothing to do with your intelligence, your talent, or your potential. It's not because you lack knowledge. It's because you can't emotionally handle what you already know. You know your strategy. You know your plan. You even know your weaknesses. But when emotion hits, when uncertainty and fear step in, everything logical disappears. You're not fighting the market. You're fighting yourself. Because trading isn't a game of knowledge. It's a test of emotional endurance. And most traders fail, not because they don't understand the market, but because they don't understand their own mind. You've probably read dozens of books, watched countless videos, memorized every rule about risk management and setups. But when real money is on the line, when your heart starts racing, when your losses sting, you don't trade your plan. You trade your emotions. You trade your fears. You trade your hopes. You trade your need to feel in control. And every time you do, you lose that tiny bit of self-trust you worked so hard to build. You start to doubt yourself again. You start to think maybe consistency is just luck. But it's not luck. It's emotional control. The ability to stay grounded when everything inside you wants to panic. The ability to remain calm in uncertainty. The ability to act from logic, not emotion. That's where consistency lives. Not in your charts, not in your indicators, not in your strategy, but in the space between your reactions and your responses. The problem is, no one teaches you how to manage that space. No one teaches you what to do when your heart is pounding, your hands are shaking, and your brain is screaming to fix it. So you end up repeating the same emotional cycle. You get motivated, you build structure, you lose control, and then you blame yourself. Again. And every time you think discipline will save you. You think you just need to try harder. But you can't discipline your emotions into silence. You have to understand them. Because discipline built on suppression doesn't last. You can't build emotional control by ignoring your emotions. You build it by learning to stay calm inside them. That's the real secret to consistency. It's not about having the perfect system or the best strategy. It's about mastering the moments when your system is tested, when your plan feels like it's falling apart, when you want to do the exact opposite of what you know is right. That's where consistency is born, in the tension between impulse and patience, fear and faith, control and surrender. Every trader faces that moment. Most lose to it. The few who don't, they become consistent. Because they've learned that emotional control isn't built in theory. It's built in practice, in the raw, uncomfortable, frustrating moments when you want to give up but don't. That's the difference between who you are and who you want to be. Not knowledge. Not talent. Emotional endurance. So before you tell yourself, I just need to be more disciplined, ask yourself this: can you stay calm when it hurts? Can you stick to your plan when your emotions beg you not to? Because that's where your consistency lives, not in the easy days, but in the days when everything inside you wants to break your own rules. Most traders think consistency is a discipline problem. They think if they could just try harder, they'd finally stop making impulsive mistakes. So they tighten their rules, redesign their plans, and promise themselves that this time will be different. They swear they'll never overtrade again. They tell themselves they'll only take A-plus setups. They write motivational quotes on their walls, watch discipline videos, and believe that sheer willpower will fix everything. But let me tell you a hard truth. You can't fight emotion with willpower. Because willpower runs out. It's like trying to hold your breath underwater and expecting to live there forever. Eventually, your emotions will win. The very moment your brain feels uncertainty, it doesn't ask for logic, it asks for safety. And your emotional brain, the part that evolved to protect you from danger, doesn't care about your trading plan. It only cares about avoiding pain. It only cares about survival. So when you lose a trade, your brain interprets that loss not as a small financial setback, but as danger. It feels the same fear your ancestors felt when a tiger appeared in the wild. Except now, the tiger isn't real. It's a red candle. And before you even realize it, your mind starts to do whatever makes you feel safe. Maybe you close trades early to avoid losing more. Maybe you move your stop loss because you can't bear to see it hit. Maybe you skip the next setup because you're scared. Or maybe you jump in too early because you can't stand watching the market move without you. And then you tell yourself you just lack discipline. You think something's wrong with you. But that's not a lack of discipline. That's your survival instinct. The same mechanism that once saved lives in the jungle is now sabotaging you in the market. You're not broken, you're human. You're emotionally wired to avoid pain and chase pleasure. The problem is trading flips that wiring upside down. In trading, the things that feel good, revenge trading, closing early, forcing setups, are usually the things that destroy you. And the things that feel uncomfortable, waiting, holding, accepting loss, are the ones that make you profitable. That's why willpower doesn't work. Because you're using logic to fight biology. You're trying to override millions of years of human evolution with a single motivational quote. Your emotional brain is older, stronger, faster. It doesn't listen to your trading rules. It reacts to your emotional signals. And the moment your nervous system senses threat, it takes control. That's why you can't think your way to consistency. You can't reason your way out of emotional chaos. You can't tell your brain, it's just a trade, when it believes it's in danger. To your nervous system, a losing streak feels like starvation, rejection, or death. That's why it panics. That's why you freeze. That's why you make the exact mistakes you promised you never would. You're not weak, you're untrained. Because no one ever taught you that trading is an emotional sport. No one told you that your real opponent isn't the market, it's your own nervous system. And you can't beat your nervous system with willpower. You have to retrain it. You have to build a new relationship with discomfort. You have to teach your body that uncertainty is not danger, that fear doesn't require reaction. That's emotional mastery. That's what separates those who last from those who burn out. But here's the problem. Most traders never even reach that stage. They keep blaming themselves. They say things like, I need to be tougher. I need more discipline. I just have to stop being emotional. But emotion isn't the enemy, it's information. Every emotional reaction in trading is your brain trying to protect you. When you close early, your brain is saying, I don't want to feel the pain of being wrong. When you take revenge trade, it's saying, I need to win back my confidence. When you overtrade, it's saying, I'm desperate to prove I still have control. Your emotions aren't random, they're protective. They're trying to keep you safe. But they're operating on old programming, rules that worked in life, but not in trading. In life, avoiding pain works. In trading, avoiding pain creates more pain. In life, control gives safety. In trading, control kills growth. That's why willpower doesn't work here. You can't just power through emotional impulses. You have to sit with them. You have to understand what they're trying to tell you. Because emotion doesn't go away by force. It goes away by being felt, understood, and released. The trader who can sit through discomfort without reacting wins. Because he's not wasting energy fighting himself. He's channeling that energy into awareness, into observation, into control. And that's what consistency really means, emotional stillness under chaos. But it starts with a shift in mindset. Stop saying, I need to control my emotions. Start saying, I need to understand my emotions. Because every time you fight your feelings, you strengthen them. And every time you sit with them, you weaken their control. Trading isn't about erasing fear. It's about functioning with fear. It's about performing calmly in the presence of uncertainty. That's where mastery begins. So the next time you feel your heart race, your chest tighten, your mind screams, do something. Pause. That's your emotional brain asking for safety. And that's your opportunity to teach it something new. To show it that you can stay calm, even when it hurts. Because that's how consistency is built. Not through willpower, not through stricter rules, but through emotional understanding. The trader who learns to listen to his emotions instead of fighting them, that trader becomes unstoppable. Because while everyone else burns out trying to be stronger, he becomes wiser. He no longer fights his mind, he works with it. That's when you realize consistency isn't about forcing discipline. It's about finding peace with discomfort. Once you do that, you no longer need to try harder. You simply stop breaking under pressure. You stop needing motivation. You stop needing control. You just flow. And that's when you finally understand the truth. Willpower might help you start the journey, but emotional mastery is what keeps you consistent. The real enemy of consistency isn't fear. It's avoidance. Because every time you avoid discomfort, you strengthen it. Think about it. You avoid holding a losing trade because you don't want to feel pain. You avoid missing a setup because you don't want to feel left out. You avoid journaling your mistakes because you don't want to face your own reflection. And every single avoidance, no matter how small, becomes a vote for inconsistency. Because consistency isn't about control, it's about emotional exposure. It's choosing to stay steady when your mind is screaming to react. The truth is, most traders spend all their time trying to control the uncontrollable, the market, while completely ignoring the one thing they can actually master, their response. The best traders don't control outcomes, they control reactions. They don't fight discomfort, they sit with it. And that's also where your breakthrough will begin, when you finally decide to stop avoiding and start feeling. Because the moment you choose to face your discomfort instead of fleeing from it, the market stops controlling you. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop chasing safety. You start building strength. That's the real transformation. When trading stops being a war against emotion and becomes a training ground for emotional growth. The real enemy of consistency isn't fear. It's the part of you that refuses to feel it. Once you stop avoiding discomfort, you'll realize that every emotion you once ran from was never meant to stop you. It was meant to teach you how to stay. Every trader has an emotional threshold, a point where their ability to stay calm, logical, and disciplined collapses under pressure. It's not about skill or strategy. It's about how much emotional weight their mind can hold before it starts to crack. You see, everyone has a limit. A point where uncertainty becomes unbearable, where loss feels too personal, and where boredom feels like suffocation. For one trader, that might be a $10 loss. For another, it might take $10,000. The number doesn't matter. What matters is what that number means to you, what your brain and nervous system have been trained to interpret as danger. Your emotional threshold is built from your past, the experiences, traumas, and lessons that taught your mind what pain feels like. Maybe you grew up needing control to feel safe. Maybe failure wasn't just a setback. It meant judgment, rejection, or shame. And now, when you lose a trade, that same emotional pattern activates. It's not just a red candle on your screen. It's your nervous system reliving the feeling of being unsafe. So when traders talk about staying calm under pressure, what they're really describing is a high emotional threshold. It's the ability to sit in chaos without reacting, to let the market fluctuate without letting your mind follow it. And this, not discipline, not motivation, is what separates consistent traders from emotional ones. Because when your emotional threshold is low, even the smallest uncertainty feels unbearable. You'll close trades too early, hesitate to pull the trigger, or chase moves impulsively. Not because you don't know better, but because your body is trying to protect you from discomfort. It's survival mode disguised as bad habits. But the key to breaking that pattern isn't to become emotionless. It's to expand your emotional capacity. You do that by facing discomfort in controlled doses, by letting yourself feel the pain of a small loss and not running from it, by reviewing your mistakes instead of deleting your journal, by watching your emotions rise and fall, and realizing they don't have to control you. Over time, you build tolerance. Just like lifting weights at the gym, your nervous system adapts. You become capable of handling bigger swings, deeper uncertainty, and longer stretches of boredom, without losing your center. That's when you start to see what real consistency feels like. It's not about the number of winning trades or green days on your screen. It's about stability. The kind of inner calm that stays unshaken even when the market throws chaos at you. Because true consistency doesn't mean you never feel fear. It means fear no longer dictates your actions. It means your logic stays online even when emotions are loud. It means you've built enough self-awareness to recognize when your threshold is being tested. And instead of reacting, you breathe through it. That's emotional mastery. That's the real foundation of consistency. When you can take a loss without self-doubt. When you can sit through boredom without forcing a trade. When you can see uncertainty not as danger, but as part of the process. That's when trading stops being a fight and starts becoming a flow. You begin to realize that the goal isn't to eliminate emotion, but to integrate it. To let emotion exist without letting it lead. Because every consistent trader has one thing in common. They've trained their nervous system to stay regulated under stress. They don't rise and fall with every tick. They don't attach their self-worth to their P&L. Their emotions still come and go, but they no longer define their performance. And that's where the real shift happens. When you no longer chase control, you become it. When you stop fighting your emotions, they lose power over you. And when you build that emotional threshold, that steady, calm presence in the middle of market chaos, you finally understand. Consistency isn't something you do. It's something you become. Let's be brutally honest. Most traders don't actually want to see who they become when they lose. Because losing doesn't just take your money. It strips away every layer of illusion you've built about yourself. Trading has a cruel honesty to it. It doesn't care how confident you sound, how many strategies you know, or how many hours you've studied. It shows you your rawest self, the version you try to hide even from yourself. The moment you hit that red candle, every buried fear comes rushing out. The fear of being wrong, the fear of losing control, the fear of not being enough. That's why trading feels so personal, because it is. It doesn't just test your skill. It tests your relationship with failure, uncertainty, and self-worth. Every impulsive trade isn't random. It's a reflection, a mirror held up by the market showing you what you still haven't resolved within yourself. When you jump into a setup without confirmation, it's not about the setup, it's about your fear of missing out. When you move your stop loss wider, it's not about giving the trade more room. It's about avoiding the pain of being wrong. When you revenge trade, it's not about recovering money. It's about recovering pride. The chart becomes your therapist, silent but brutally accurate. It keeps showing you the same emotional patterns until you finally face them. And that's where most traders break. They want to fix their behavior, but they don't want to face their beliefs. They want to trade calmly, but they don't want to sit with discomfort. They want consistency, but they still define their worth by results. So they stay stuck in the same loop, trying to patch emotional wounds with new strategies. But here's the truth. You can't fix a belief with a backtest. You can't heal emotional patterns with logic. Because logic isn't what drives your inconsistency. Emotion is. You don't skip setups because your brain forgot the rules. You skip them because your body can't handle the tension of waiting. You don't overtrade because you love charts. You overtrade because you hate stillness. The real work begins when you stop asking, "How do I fix my trading?" and start asking, "What is my trading showing me about myself?" Because every trade is feedback. Every mistake is a message. Every repeated pattern is your mind trying to tell you something you keep avoiding. Maybe it's your attachment to being right, the need to prove something to yourself or others. Maybe it's your fear of loss, the belief that every red trade means you're failing as a person. Maybe it's your need for control, the idea that if you just manage everything perfectly, you'll finally feel safe. Whatever it is, trading will expose it, over and over, until you stop avoiding the mirror. Because you can't build consistency while running from your own reflection. As long as your identity depends on outcomes, your consistency will depend on luck. You'll keep chasing that one perfect day to feel okay again, and the market will keep reminding you that peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from detaching. The moment you stop trading to protect your ego, you start trading from the truth. You stop needing to be right, and you start focusing on being aligned. You stop defining yourself by one trade, and you start seeing yourself as the sum of your process. That's the shift from chasing results to living your truth. The truth that losses don't define you. The truth is that mistakes aren't shameful, they're mirrors. The truth that consistency is just emotional honesty in action. When you stop hiding from the parts of yourself that panic, that crave, that doubt, you stop fighting the market and you start mastering yourself. Because the market doesn't care how disciplined you say you are. It only reflects how emotionally honest you're willing to be. And once you stop running from that reflection, once you face the mirror fully, without judgment, without resistance, you realize that every time you lost control, it wasn't failure. It was feedback. Every emotional breakdown wasn't the end. It was an invitation. An invitation to finally see, understand, and heal the real you beneath the trader identity. That's when consistency becomes possible. Not because you've mastered the market, but because you've mastered the one thing that truly matters: yourself. Let's talk about something almost no trader admits. Inconsistency can be addictive. It sounds strange, doesn't it? How can losing feel addictive? How can the same mistakes that cause so much pain keep pulling you back? But if you look closer, you'll realize something uncomfortable. You don't just trade for money. You trade for feeling. You trade for excitement, for hope, for that brief surge of power that comes when you click buy, and your screen lights up green. Because even when you lose, there's still a rush, a sense of movement, of being in the game. Your brain gets a dopamine hit every time you break your rules, every time you chase a move, every time you almost catch the big win. That cycle, hope, risk, thrill, pain, and restart, becomes its own kind of high. The chaos starts to feel alive. The silence of discipline feels dead. And that's the trap, because consistency by nature is boring. It's steady, predictable, emotionally quiet. You follow your rules. You take only clean setups. You wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, for the right opportunity. There's no thrill in waiting. No spike of adrenaline. Just patience, silence, and calm repetition. And for a mind addicted to chaos, that stillness feels unbearable. It feels like suffocation. So subconsciously, you sabotage yourself, not because you hate losing, but because you crave feeling. You crave the drama, the rush, the emotional movement that trading chaos provides. It becomes the emotional equivalent of gambling, the illusion of control mixed with the excitement of risk. You tell yourself you're trying to win, but deep down, you're chasing the feeling of winning, the thrill of uncertainty. This is what makes trading such a psychological paradox. The very behaviors that make you feel alive are the same ones that destroy your consistency. And the behaviors that create consistency, patience, detachment, repetition, feel emotionally dead to the part of your brain that craves stimulation. You say you want peace, but your nervous system is wired for chaos. You want calm, but you feel uncomfortable in quiet. You want control, but you secretly love the unpredictable. That's the addiction no one talks about, not to money, but to emotional volatility. Think about it. How many times have you caught yourself checking charts when there's no setup, just because you're bored? How many times have you jumped into a random trade because you just wanted to be in? That's not curiosity, that's craving. That's your brain begging for stimulation. Because deep down, you've linked trading not with mastery, but with emotion. You've conditioned your nervous system to expect excitement every time you open your platform. So when the market is quiet, your body goes into withdrawal. You start seeking chaos just to feel normal again. That's why discipline feels painful, because it starves that addiction. It deprives you of the emotional roller coaster that you've unknowingly come to depend on. And like any addiction, the first step to breaking it is awareness. You have to see it for what it is. You have to acknowledge that part of you that doesn't actually want calm, the part that secretly wants the market to move wildly so you can feel something. Until you confront that truth, no strategy, no trading plan, no journaling routine will fix you. Because your problem isn't logical, it's emotional. Your brain is wired to seek dopamine, not results. It doesn't care about your long-term equity curve. It cares about short-term spikes in pleasure. And every impulsive trade feeds that loop. Every chase reinforces it. Every almost win strengthens the addiction. The more chaos you feed it, the more chaos it craves. And the more you try to use discipline to fight it, the harder it fights back, because you're not removing the emotional need, you're just suppressing it. The real work of consistency, then, is rewiring that emotional loop. It's not just about removing bad habits. It's about replacing emotional reward systems. You have to train your brain to find dopamine in stillness, to associate pleasure with patience, to link satisfaction not with excitement, but with execution. That means celebrating a trade you didn't take because it didn't fit your plan. It means feeling pride not from making money, but from following your rules under pressure. It means learning to enjoy the quiet, to find peace in the absence of chaos. But make no mistake, that rewiring process feels uncomfortable. When you start detaching from emotional trading, you'll feel bored. Empty even. You'll miss the rush. You'll crave that old spark of adrenaline that came from chasing. That's withdrawal. That's your nervous system detoxing from years of emotional overexposure. And most traders relapse there, not because they don't understand trading, but because they can't handle the stillness. They mistake calm for emptiness. They think something's wrong because the market suddenly feels dull. But that's actually progress. That's your system recalibrating from chaos to balance. Consistency is born in that silence, in the boredom that most traders can't stand. The moment you stop needing excitement to feel alive, you become dangerous. Not emotionally, but professionally. Because now you're no longer trading for stimulation. You're trading for alignment. You stop forcing trades because there's no emotional hunger driving you. You stop reacting to noise because you're no longer chasing a rush. You begin to experience trading as it truly is, a process, not a thrill. Here's what most traders don't realize. Consistency isn't about eliminating emotion. It's about breaking emotional dependency. You'll always feel something when you trade: fear, hope, frustration, temptation. But those feelings don't have to own you. When you start viewing emotion as information, not instruction, you break the loop. You see impulses for what they are, emotional urges that pass. You recognize boredom as a signal of stability, not a problem to fix. You start to find fulfillment in process, not performance. And slowly, your identity shifts. You go from being a trader chasing markets to a trader mastering mind. The thrill fades, but something deeper replaces it: peace. A quiet confidence that doesn't need constant validation. A steady focus that doesn't rise or fall with your last result. That's what true consistency feels like. It's not exciting. It's not glamorous. It's calm, almost dull, but powerful in its stability. You no longer swing between euphoria and despair. You just are. Because once you break the addiction to chaos, you discover something far more valuable than excitement: clarity. You can finally see the market without emotional fog. You can act without overthinking. You can wait without anxiety. You can lose without spiraling. That's emotional freedom, and that's the foundation of mastery. So the next time you find yourself craving that quick dopamine hit, that impulsive click, that false sense of control, pause. Ask yourself, what am I actually seeking right now? Is it a setup or a feeling? Because until you know the difference, you'll keep mistaking chaos for passion and emotion for edge. The moment you see through that illusion, you break the cycle. You stop trading for excitement and start trading from awareness. That's how you rewire the addiction. By making peace with boredom. By falling in love with stillness. By finding meaning not in the rush of the moment, but in the discipline of the process. That's how consistency is built. Not in the noise of the market, but in the silence of your own mind. Let's rebuild you from the inside out. Because if your problem isn't knowledge, then the solution isn't another indicator, another strategy, or another YouTube video. The real work begins in your mind. What you need isn't more data, it's reprogramming. The kind that rewires how you respond when pressure hits, when fear spikes, and when the market tests your emotional limits. Step 1: awareness. Before you can change any behavior, you have to see it clearly. Not after the trade, not when it's too late, but in the exact moment it happens. The moment your heart rate jumps. The moment your cursor hovers over the button, even though you know the setup isn't clean. That's your emotional entry point. The split second when awareness can change everything. Instead of labeling it as weakness, start observing it with curiosity. What thoughts show up right before you break your rules? What sensations hit your body? Tension, restlessness, heat, anxiety? Awareness is like turning the lights on in a dark room. It doesn't solve the problem instantly, but it shows you what's really there. Step 2: pause. This is the most underrated habit in trading psychology. Every time you feel that emotional urge, the impulse to close early, to double up, to chase a move, pause. Just for 10 seconds. It sounds ridiculously small, but that gap is where transformation begins. That 10-second pause is the moment you step out of automatic emotion and into conscious control. It's the bridge between reaction and response. You'll be amazed how many bad trades dissolve in those 10 seconds. Because emotion burns fast. If you give it just a little space, it loses its grip. That pause is the birthplace of discipline. Not enforcing yourself, but in giving yourself time to choose consciously. Step 3. Reflection. Most traders journal what they did. Entries, exits, setups. But very few journal why they did it. The why is where growth hides. After every impulsive move, ask, what emotion was I trying to escape? Was I bored? Was I afraid of missing out? Was I trying to prove I could win it back? These questions dig beneath the surface and reveal the emotional roots of your actions. Because trading isn't a game of charts, it's a mirror of emotions. When you write down your emotional triggers, you start to map your inner landscape. You start to recognize your recurring patterns, the thoughts that always come before sabotage. And once you can identify them, you can interrupt them. Reflection turns chaos into clarity. Step 4. Reframe. This is where the magic happens. Start seeing losses not as punishment, but as emotional training sessions. Every losing trade is a gym session for your nervous system. Every red candle is a rep in emotional endurance. Most traders see a loss and think, I failed. But the truth is, you just trained your mind to handle pain with composure. Every time you face discomfort and don't react, every time you sit through uncertainty without trying to control it, you're building emotional muscle. You're raising your threshold. You're rewiring your nervous system for stability. Think of it like resistance training. The discomfort is the growth signal. Just like lifting weights tears muscle fibers to rebuild them stronger, emotional discomfort stretches your tolerance and resilience. The more you expose yourself to uncertainty consciously, without escaping it, the stronger you become. This is the process behind every consistent trader you admire. They didn't just master setups, they mastered staying still in emotional storms. Reprogramming your mind isn't about becoming a robot. It's about becoming emotionally fluent. Knowing what your body feels when you're triggered, naming it, breathing through it, and choosing not to obey it. That's mastery. Because in trading, your edge isn't just your strategy. It's your ability to stay stable while everyone else reacts. Here's the truth. Your brain is plastic. It changes with repetition. The same way you trained it to crave chaos, you can train it to find comfort in calm. Each pause, each moment of awareness, each reflection and reframe, they build new neural pathways. They make emotional control more natural, more automatic. Over time, the urges fade. The drama loses its pull. You stop feeling the need to chase, to force, to prove. You start feeling a quiet kind of strength, the kind that doesn't need excitement to feel alive. That's what emotional reprogramming looks like. It's slow, it's uncomfortable, but it's real, and it's permanent. You're not trying to eliminate emotion. You're teaching your mind how to handle it differently. You're creating space between what you feel and what you do. And that space is where consistency lives. So remember this. The market doesn't reward those who know the most. It rewards those who react the least. Awareness gives you clarity. Pause gives you choice. Reflection gives you insight. Reframe gives you growth. Do that long enough, and consistency won't be something you chase. It'll be something you become. Because every time you choose awareness over impulse, you're rewiring your mind. Every time you breathe through discomfort instead of fighting it, you're strengthening your control. Every time you turn pain into practice, you're evolving. That's the real game. Not the charts, not the setups, but the emotional architecture behind every decision. And when you master that, when you can feel fear, greed, boredom, or uncertainty and still act from logic, that's when trading finally feels effortless. Not because it's easy, but because you have changed. Because the market no longer dictates who you are, you do. That's reprogramming. That's freedom. That's consistency. You can't stay consistent if your identity is inconsistent. You can't act like a professional while still believing you're a mess. Every behavior you repeat comes from how you see yourself. If you see yourself as someone who always sabotages, you'll unconsciously live up to that story. If you see yourself as a trader who's disciplined, structured, calm under pressure, your brain will start aligning your actions to match that version. Because your brain doesn't care about what's true. It cares about what you believe is true. That's why identity is the deepest layer of transformation. You can change your strategy, your tools, your habits, but until you change the story you tell yourself about who you are, you'll keep circling back to the same emotional patterns. So the next time you break your rule, don't say, I'm such an idiot. That voice isn't the truth. It's just your old identity trying to survive. Instead, pause and say, that wasn't me. That was my old pattern. I don't do that anymore. Because the moment you stop identifying with inconsistency, you stop feeding it. You starve the old version of yourself until it fades away. Think about it. Every consistent trader you admire doesn't just act differently, they see themselves differently. They don't wake up saying, "I hope I'm disciplined today." They wake up knowing, "I'm the kind of person who follows my process." That's not confidence, that's identity. And the only way to shift your identity is through repetition. Every time you act with discipline, even in small ways, you cast a vote for your new self. Every time you follow your plan, even when it's uncomfortable, you're proving to your brain that this is who you are now. You're not chasing consistency anymore. You are consistent. So stop trying to force discipline from willpower. Start cultivating it from belief. Because belief shapes behavior, and behavior reinforces belief. This is how true consistency is built, not from fighting your old habits, but from outgrowing them. You're no longer the trader who breaks down under pressure. You're the one who breathes, pauses, and chooses alignment over impulse. That's how you rewire the loop. That's how you create lasting stability. And that's how you finally become the trader your past self was dreaming of becoming. The real reason you can't stay consistent isn't because you lack discipline, intelligence, or strategy. It's because you've been chasing control in a game that's built on uncertainty. You've been trying to control outcomes. You've been trying to force profits. You've been trying to bend the market to match your expectations. But trading doesn't reward control. It rewards surrender. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean trading carelessly or accepting losses blindly. It means you stop trying to control what was never yours to control in the first place. You stop fighting the flow of uncertainty. You stop battling every emotion, every fluctuation, every candle that doesn't go your way. Surrender means trust. Trust in your plan. Trust in your process. Trust in yourself, even when the market tests your patience. Because the harder you try to control everything, the more chaotic you become inside. You become tense, reactive, and emotionally fragile. You start seeing the market as an enemy instead of a mirror. And that's where inconsistency thrives, in resistance, not in rhythm. But the moment you surrender, truly surrender, something shifts. You stop forcing trades. You stop chasing certainty. You stop needing to be right every time. You simply follow your system, let the probabilities play out, and accept whatever comes. That's when trading starts to feel light again. That's when your actions become cleaner. That's when your emotions stop hijacking your focus. Because consistency isn't about control, it's about acceptance. Acceptance that you will lose sometimes. Acceptance that you will feel fear. Acceptance that uncertainty isn't the enemy, it's the environment. The day you stop fighting the market, stop fighting your emotions, and start flowing with both, that's the day consistency becomes effortless. You'll realize it was never about trying harder. It was about letting go smarter. The calm trader doesn't win because he predicts the future. He wins because he's no longer disturbed by it. And when you finally stop trying to control stability, you become it. You become the stillness in chaos, the order within randomness, the eye of the storm that never flinches. That's the final truth. Consistency isn't something you chase. It's something you become when you stop fighting what you can't control and start mastering the one thing you always could: yourself.